Hello everybody, I'm back to share some things I've been making using the beautiful pearl beads that I received from Baby Crafts. I will put a link to the video where I received some lovely craft goodies from Baby Crafts so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And this time I've been using the pearl beads. I did receive other things as well, but this one is concentrating on the pearl beads and the jewelry making kit. So I've had a lot of fun, and I'm kind of, I haven't had a lot of experience with beading in general, just, average. So this was a fun thing for me to do. So the first things I made a couple of charms, and I kind of have to work on my technique of curling the ends a little bit, so we won't go into too much detail about this. And they are just charms for on projects, so, and I've used my own little spaces on those. But then I decided I would make a pair of earrings. Now I don't actually wear jewelry, so I may actually change these to charms as well. And I've used the little head pins for these, and I've actually used the earring backs on the ends and on the end up here, and I don't mind that at all, actually, especially for a charm. Perhaps not for earrings, but I have used them, and I would definitely use those in journals or projects for charms. And I've just used the 6mm, is it the 6mm pearl and the 8mm pearls in this one, and I've used the earring hooks as well, along with the little jump rings. So they're the earrings I played around making, and as I said, they may just turn into charms. And then I decided to make a couple of stick pins because us crafty ladies enjoy making stick pins. I haven't made, I don't make them very often, but I did make a few, and I've used the little earring backs actually to hold them until I put glue on them, because I do like to use the glossy accents to keep them in place properly. And once again, I've used my own spaces on these stick pins, and I've used the 8mm, the 6mm, and the 10mm beads on these ones. And these stick pins are from Gail. Thank you, Gail. And so I've made those. And the next thing I made was some flower centers. I made myself some little flower centers, and I used the jewelry elastic for these, and I had a lot of fun. This is the first time I've used the jewelry elastic, and I've used the very popular style of flower centers that is very popular. I've just used that style to make some, and I think they turned out really quite nicely. And of course, once I attach it to a project, I will trim the elastics off. So I've made, I made all of those ones. And then I tried one also with some wire that I had. That's my own very narrow wire. And really, you can't tell a difference between them. So that was lovely. These are the 8mm coloured beads, or glass pearls, from Baby Crafts, along with the stranded 8mm pearls as well. They also have the little crimping beads in them to space them apart. So that was the next thing I made, and I will show you how I made those using the elastic at the end of this video. There's a couple of small tutorials on what I did. And then the next thing I did was make some beaded trim, and I love beaded trim, and beaded trim is very expensive, and now I know why. Because beaded trim takes a long time to make. It really does, especially if you're not used to it. Like I said, I don't do an awful lot of beading at all. I put a bead here and there on my crafts, but it takes a long time to do. And these are the 4mm beads and the 6mm bead on the end. And then I've just used a tiny little seed bead of my own as a stopper on the end of that. So that was the first, and that's about a 13-inch piece. And then I got a little bit more courageous, and I made another beaded trim, and I jazzied it up a little bit. I've got two different style fringes on that one. So with the longer, the middle one here is the same as this, but then we've got this 4mm bead, the 6mm, the 8, and then a 10mm on the end. And it's really nice and heavy, and it's going to be fun to use in a project. And then I thought I'd try something just a little bit different, and I've added a pink bead in with this one. And this one's only 6 inches because I'd done a lot of beading by this time. So I have a little a scallop in this one. Can you see that on the camera? I hope so. So we'll just move those up. And this one, it's got the pink, the beautiful soft pink 8mm glass beads in this one. It's got also the little crimping beads put in between the 6mm beads and the 8mm pink ones. It also has the 10 on the end of these ones. Looking at it now, I wish I had taken the middle one a bit lower than the outer edges on all three of these, but you know, I'm learning, and it was a fun thing to learn. Like I said, it took a long time, really did. And then lastly? No, not quite lastly. I made well, it's an embellishment, I would say. It's an embellishment of sorts. I think Trisha collects brooches, these dangly brooch antiques. We can't get those sorts of things over here. And then I think it might have been Lacey actually made something like this, but I don't know what video that is. So Lacey, if you see this and it was you, put a link in your comment or something like that so people can go have a look. But that's where I got the idea from. I remembered seeing somebody who I think is Lacey made something similar to this. And all this is a series of, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pearls, and I've just used the head pin at the bottom and then the eye pins to join them all. I've used this little filigree piece that is my own, and on the back here I've just put some wadding, and I can attach that to a project. I did make a 3 bead one to indicate to me that that is the top, because I kind of wanted, there was that one just needed an extra bit at the top, otherwise it would have finished like that, and I wanted that one little space filling in like that. So I've made that, and I will show you how I made that as well at the end of the video. And then lastly, I've been busy, haven't I? Lastly, I've made some more little embellishments, and these are just like little flower centers or embellishments, whatever you want to use them for. And these are just some little clusters of pearls, and they're all the pearls that were from BB Crafts, plus the little crimping beads in them as well to add a little bit of sparkle. And I've made quite a few of these, and these were really simple to make. In fact, everything was actually quite easy to make. The beading trim, it was just time consuming, that's all, but very enjoyable all the same. And I will be making some more because I really did enjoy it. So I've just made all these little embellishments here. I thought they'd be lovely on a flower, and I'll also show you how I made those at the end of the video. But I will tell you that I think that's all I've made. Yes, here we go. There's another one and one more. And I do tend to like the smaller clusters. I did try a bigger one, and I prefer the smaller clusters. So I've made all of those, and all I used for that was I used the embroidery hoop, and I would say it's the couture beading method. You know, you see them on videos, or you see them, they've got these big racks and they've got their tulle and they're sewing through these racks. And so I used an embroidery hoop, and I did see Karina, Shabby Antique and Beauty, I think. She also used an embroidery hoop when she did something similar. And what I did was I did 4 layers of tulle. Because I got these big rolls from Baby Craft, I just took a length of tulle and folded it over 4 times and put that into the embroidery hoop, and that gives it enough stability to sew on quite nicely. And when I cut it out, I left a circle around it because that gives me the option at a later date to either cut it down around those beads more, or actually if it's in the middle of a flower or something, you know, you might want that extra little bit of tulle to add interest around it. So I've just left it, but as you can see, that holds it very, very nicely, just layering that tulle up a little bit. And I think that is it. So there's probably 2 or 3 little quick tutorials at the end of this, just to show you how I did it. There is nothing new here. These are not my original ideas. This is just to show you how I did it as a new beginner beader. So, you know, just remember that there's plenty of other videos out there showing you how to do beading. It's a lot of fun to do, and I will definitely be doing more bead work. So thank you for watching, and thank you once again, BB Crafts, and I will have another video coming up soon, working with some of the other things that I received. So take care, everybody, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye. I just thread it onto the needle while it's still on the strand, and push the needle right through before removing it from the strand. So this is a simple one with the 6 4-inch beads on it, followed by a 6-inch bead on the end, and then also followed by a little, what do they call these? Little seed bead. This is a square cut seed bead. This is my own seed bead, and it just acts as a little stopper to stop all the beads from falling off the end of the thread. And then you detour the little seed bead at the end after you've gone through it. Let me see if I can show you that. So we went through the beads, through the seed bead, around the seed bead, and we're going back up all the beads now. Sometimes these just go straight through, other times it, you know, they move around and it's a little bit more fiddly. Pull the thread through. I find if you hold on to the little seed bead at the end, it's much easier to get it moved up towards the ribbon. Hold the thread towards that side of the ribbon and just put a couple of stitches here. Sometimes I knot it, but my thread is deciding to tangle a little bit at the moment, so I'm not going to knot it there. And then come it over try and work out exactly where you want your next dangle to be, and I'll put a knot here. See how it's tangling? It doesn't always do that, but every time I've tried to film something today for this, my thread has decided it's going to tangle up, and I have I've gone through it and everything, but it doesn't want to behave. Okay, so for the next one, I'm using 3 4mm beads. This is just a piece of wadding. I found that that works quite well to hold my beads in place, since I don't have professional beading equipment. 3 6mm beads, 2 8mm beads, and 1 10mm bead. Here we go. How's that? That's what I'll be using on the next one, plus a seed bead on the end. So I'll just thread these through. Hopefully they will behave for me. Just do one at a time if they're not going to. It's actually quite a simple process. Oh goodness, she says as she drops her bead. Making beaded trim. It's fiddly more than anything though, and time consuming, very, very time consuming. It takes such a long time to make a piece of beaded trim, so I really do appreciate the time put in for those ladies that do a lot of beading. It does take a long time for a small piece of work, but it's enjoyable, very enjoyable, especially if things behave. So there we go, we have all our beads on there. Now we need our little seed bead, and once again I'll show you, hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. There's our beads, there's our seed bead here. We're going to detour around that and go back through all our beads. I'm going to do a few at a time, mainly because it's such a long line of beads that it won't fit properly on the needle if I do it all in one go. Plus it probably won't behave for me, seeing as I'm on camera. Sometimes it goes straight through and it's like, yes, but as soon as you put the camera on, you can guarantee that's not what will happen. Not too bad though. Okay, so we have all our beads through like that. I hold on to the little one at the end and just gently pull, holding both threads, gently pull it up so it lays flat against here, but you don't want it too tight. If you pull it too tight, it'll, let me see, it'll, oh, I don't want to pull it too tight. It might curve. You know, you've got to have some sort of swing to it. And I only use a single thread of cotton to do this. I know perhaps some people like to use a double thread, but I find a single thread isn't as noticeable. I do run it through the wax before I do it though, in the hope that it doesn't get too tangled. Probably need some new thread now anyway. So I'll just finish it off there, I think, for this little tutorial. There we go. So that's a nice combination. It's a nice heavy dangle too. When, like, I didn't do it just then, but if I run out of cotton, I knot it, a couple of knots, and then I take a few little stitches up to the top of the ribbon and knot it up the top there again as well. It's also a good idea if you put a bit of perhaps glue on the back of it, just like you would if you bought some beaded trim and you wanted to cut it to a certain length. You would glue the stitches at the back of you would glue along the stitch line before you cut it, just so all the beads didn't fall off, because that'd be a lot of work gone if you were to do that. Oh, come on, there we go. Okay. So I hope that was easy enough to follow, and I would probably use a better ribbon than this. I don't have a lot of ribbons, and this one's very slippery. Perhaps a firmer ribbon may be easy, wouldn't tangle perhaps quite so much. So all I do is just get an eye pin, thread a pearl on, and these are an 8cm glass pearl. Hold it with my little pliers and slightly bend it over, not quite a right angle, and then probably about 1 centimetre, I would say, just over 1/2 inch perhaps. Trim that off. Put your pliers on the end of it, see the angle that is on, and then just bring it around like that so it makes a little eye. Hold that part there and bring it towards you to open it up. Get an eye pin, put that on, and then holding that, close that up just by, you don't need to twist it, you just need to move it back into place like that, and then continue doing that for 5 pearls. And once you get up to the top, I've left the last one on and just bent it over until I go to the next stage. Alright, so now what I am going to do is, I have this little metal filigree piece that was my own, because I don't have any brooch backs or anything like that, and I don't particularly want it as a brooch, it's more for an embellishment. And it has little holes in here, and so there's like 1, 2, 3 holes down the side there. I'm going to put one of these through the second hole, like that. Oh, hang on. What I want to do first is, I bent them when I'd finished, mainly so that the beads didn't fall off. So now I'm just going to slightly straighten it, put it into that second hole there, as tight as I can, and then bend it. Doesn't matter which way, mainly just to stop it from falling back out. And then I'm going to trim it off. Grab the little back of it and just roll it, and it doesn't have to be neat, it just has to be rolled pretty much so that it doesn't fall back through the filigree piece, and so it's going to stay there like that and dangle. Okay, so I'm going to go around and put all of these, as many as I can actually, into this filigree piece. There's 10 around there, but where the 10 fit, I don't know, because it depends if they, like, They might do. We'll see. I'll come back when I'm finished that and work out what I'll do on the back. Okay, so I'm just putting the last one in, and you don't have to straighten them back up again. I realise just thread it through, because if you're going to be bending them again anyway, it's okay. Just want to grab that so it doesn't fall back through when I... There we go. And it doesn't matter how neat you curl it, it's just mainly so it doesn't fall back through. So that's all 10 on. It looks quite nice, doesn't it? Just as an embellishment. To put on a wall hanging, to put on a book or something. You could add a couple more if you wanted to. I'm thinking if I decide where I want the top to be, I could... Yeah, see that? I like the way those two... Although... Let's have a look. Oh, maybe that. Okay, maybe that could be the top. I wonder if I could do something up there. Mind you, if you've got that on a book, you're going to put something around it perhaps anyway. Looks nice. I like it a lot. And that's just with the eye pins, the head pins, and the pearls, and just a filigree piece. Now the back of it you could cover with a bit of felt if you wanted to. You could stitch a bit of felt. You could put it in like on a flower or something like that. Because I think that's just how it's meant to be, like that. They're all the same length, but when you've got it up like that, they all end up different lengths, don't they? You could put a couple of shorter pearls perhaps up the top. Maybe we'll do that. Let's have a look. I can take them out if they don't look any good. Let's have a look. It's all trial and error. So just a head pin. I will bend it a bit. It just makes it a bit easier once you've got it in. So maybe we'll put one there in the center and one either side perhaps. Let's have a look. Just to fill in that gap a little bit there. Yeah. Oh, it could have been like a double dangle, couldn't it? Oh, that's what I should do. Oh, I don't know if I can... Well, here we go. Let's see if we can do this again. A double dangle might... Ooh, this might be a bit messy now. Actually... I don't know if that'll look any good now. After being... It might be alright. I've got that one that I did earlier. I can use this one, I think. And then put... like Let's have a look. Oh, where were we putting it? Oh no, I've lost. Was it there? Maybe it was there. Oh, it's going to be 2, isn't it? Silly. Let's have a look at that. As long as you know that's going to be the front, it could almost have another one on it as well. Just to fill that little gap in a bit. I hope I'm in shot here. Alright, we'll make it 3. That's my son, if you can hear him in the background too. Unfortunately, the walls aren't soundproof, but that's okay. Alright, let's see if that... And then we'll just make sure that that... I've got to find where it was because it kind of sat. I think it's that one there. I hope I'm in shot. Okay, let's have a look. Yes, I like that. I like that little one just there. It fills in that gap. So that is the top of our pearl embellishment. That would be beautiful with antique silver and a real creamy pearl as well, wouldn't it? All right. Looks good. I like that. I'm just trying to see if I've got something here that it might, not really, not close by. Like that. If you had that, like if that was a lace book and you had that, a bow underneath it or something like that, how lovely would that be? Or even as a closure. Could work for a few things. So I've just cut a little bit of wadding out and glued it to the back of this filigree. I'm just waiting for it to dry. I've just used a bit of fabric glue on that, and I'm just pressing it in a little bit without bending the filigree, of course. That way when I come to use it on something, it's got a nice base to either sew it on, because I can still sew up through those holes, or glue it on. So, and we know which our top part is because it's the one with the shorter pearl. That's the cat. She's trying to get in the room. She has been very affectionate today, which is lovely. But she's all over the place. And she's already eaten a bead, a little tiny seed bead. So I don't want her in here eating anything else. So I will just, where's the scissors? Lost my little scissors. Oh dear, I don't know where they are. They're right here. Look at that. All these little bits that I cut off, I've been just making little eye pins with them, like that. Look at that. Must be a bit magnetic, hey? so they're not going to go to waste. I made a couple of little jump rings as well. So they won't go to waste. I will use them. So I'm just going to cut it around like that to start with. Make sure it's dry. Those little scissors aren't very sharp anymore for some reason, probably because they're really old. They used to be wonderful getting into everything. I'll come back. Alright, so all I've done so far is knotted my thread through the tulle, and then I'm just going to decide what beads I want. I'm using a combination of 4, 6 and 8mm beads, along with the little crimping beads actually. What I do is, on the size of the pearl I'm using, I try and take the same or similar size stitch across. That way, hopefully the bead will sit rather flat and the holes will be at the side of the bead rather than up on its end like that too much. That's just the way I found works for me. I'm just learning as I go along basically here, and just grabbing another bead, and this one's a smaller one, so with the smaller one I would definitely be taking a smaller stitch. So that one is a small 4mm bead. Sorry, I have to stand up to do this to make sure I'm under the camera properly. And so see how that sits fairly flat there. And then I'll go to where I want to put my next bead and do the same thing. Maybe we've done some of those. Let's find another one, a pink one perhaps. And I like the smaller ones rather than larger clusters. I think the small ones look rather sweet, and they'll fit nicely into a flower center or something like that. Now you can add some little rhinestones if you like. I've been adding the little crimping beads because they give off a little bit of sparkle, and they were what BB Craft sent me. Or you don't need to add anything else to that if you don't want to. Just let me bring a couple of these over. Just little crimping bead on the needle. And of course you only take a little stitch for those because they're only little. And see how it just adds that little bit of shine in there? You don't need a lot. Where did that other one go? Thread's getting a little bit shorter now, isn't it? And I'll just add one on there, making sure I'm in shot there. I can't see. Okay, that should be fine, so I'll just put one there. Now to finish it off, now you can see how bent my needle is. It's an old needle, but I like it on this simply because instead of having to go in, take it through and push it through and bring it out again, because of the bend in this old needle, I can just take a stitch like that and pull it through a bit easier than I would it with a straight needle, just to finish this little cluster off. And all I do is do a couple of knots. Oops. Sorry, it's a bit chilly here today. My fingers don't want to get going. There we go. Just a couple of knots is all you need in the back there. And there we go. And if your thread was longer, you'd just go over to the next one over there and start again. But I don't have enough thread. And that's all I do. And then I cut them out. I've decided I'm leaving a little bit of the tulle around the clusters simply to give me an option when I use them as to whether I want to have that tulle on, or I can cut it even closer when the time comes. But I thought if you've got it in a flower and it ends up going up like that a little bit, it might look rather pretty. You could leave more if you wanted to as well. But those layers of tulle hold that quite nicely, so that's nice. And they will pretty much, the stitches or anything like that isn't obvious at all once it's on its background fabric or something. So that's how I do those little ones. So the first thing we do is we get some of the jewellery elastic. Now I've never really worked with jewellery elastic before, so this was like a little experiment for me. And we're going to use a threader, needle threader, put our elastic through that and then pull that back through our needle. And there we have, we don't need too much of it. And then I've got my little crimping beads here. I'm going to decide what colour beads. I haven't made one in this colour, so we'll use this gold colour. We need 6 outside beads. And we need 1 inside bead. And we need our crimping beads, like I said. And we're going to alternate them. We're going to put a outside bead on and then a crimping bead, and an outside bead on and a crimping bead. And we're going to do that 6 times. So making sure that one end has the crimping bead on and one end has the pearl on. And then we're going to knot that. Now, I'll just come up a bit closer and hopefully we can do this in a way you can understand. We're going to do a normal knot by taking that through there like that. But once we've gone through, we're going to go through it again like that. And we're going to pull that, and then we're going to do that. So under and then like that. I hope you can see that. I will show you again at the other end, and pull that nice and tight, like really tight, because it is elastic and we don't want it to come undone. Okay, so that little end will be on one side and this little end will be on the other. So take this one, put yourself a crimping bead on, put your middle bead on, like that. And then directly opposite, whoops, hoping we're under the camera, directly opposite like that, we're going to go under like that. So it's like that. Okay, bring it over the top, that one directly opposite there. Put a crimping bead on, or seed bead, whatever you're using. So we're making sure it's directly opposite. This is where we started. We've gone under this one here. We're going over it. And what we need to do, I'm just turning it so I can see. We need to go through the hole on that bead again and come out underneath. Now, just this is where you've got to be careful. You don't want your elastic moving from that one opposite. Sometimes, like, see how that popped out there? The bead popped out of the center. Just pull it back into its spot. It belongs there. Pull your elastic through. And there we go, see? Just keep pulling it until it all sits in place. Give it a pull. Where's that other bead gone? Oh, it's sat down there. Okay, so it just, it's hard to do when, it just needs a little bit of readjusting. And there we go. We have our little flower center. So we knotted it over here. We went under the back. We put a crimping bead on, a pearl on. We came under, over the top, put a crimping bead here, back through the pearl, and then put our thread to the back. And so now they're both kind of here. We're going to knot it again. I'll see if I can do it. So we're doing a knot where, like that, we go under, and then, whoops, sorry, we're going under, and then under both of those elastics, and we're going to tighten it, but don't tighten that first one too much, and then we're going to do the same thing again, under and under both of them. And it's this one we can pull really, really tight. Try and get it to the back though. Just try not to distort the shape of your flower center too much while you're doing that. That's why we pull it really tight on the second knot rather than the first knot. So it will. Okay, there we go. There's our flower center. I think it works quite well. Okay. And the elastic, it's a tiny little bit noticeable, but I wouldn't say it's any more noticeable than the wire one I tried, or if you're gluing. I think either way you're going to see something, and just like with other things, when you get that on some sort of fabric, it kind of disappears anyway, and if it's like, you know, it's not that noticeable. So there we go. That's my results using the jewellery elastic.